Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Implementing Process Thinking and Risk Assessment. I'm your host, Rachel Pradhan, Marketing Director of Beacon Quality, a mobile auditing software perfect for layer process audits, as well as health and safety audits and 5S. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by over 200 attendees and Praveen Gupta, Director of Quality for Stephen Gould Corporation, who will be walking you through the process thinking for ISO 9001 2015, ISO 13485, AS 9100, as well as IATF 16949. As Praveen presents and you want to ask a question, simply type in your question into the question section of your GoToWebinar panel. And then towards the end of the presentation, I'll read them aloud so Praveen can answer them. So a quick intro of Praveen Gupta. On the next slide there, Praveen Gupta has traveled the country speaking on Six Sigma, process excellence, and performance measures. He has also authored over 15 books on quality, as well as written numerous articles for quality trade publications such as Quality Progress, Quality Engineering, Quality Digest, Quality World, and many others. With over 20 years of experience in operational excellence, continuous improvement, and quality management systems in semiconductors, the automotive industry, medical devices, pharma, software, and many others in the software industries, he is well versed in process and risk thinking. We are very excited to have him here today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Praveen to share with us today's agenda.
Welcome all. My objective today is to share my experience in process thinking and risk assessment to make our ISO 9001 compliant quality management systems more effective. Today's key takeaways include one, the practical knowledge of process thinking, two, a new process model beyond PDCA for achieving excellence or perfection, and simple tools to assess and mitigate business, process, and product risks. But I would like to first thank Stephen Gould Corporation for supporting my work and the ability to share my experience with others. Stephen Gould Corporation is the largest independent custom product and packaging solutions provider in the United States. It's where people and ideas come together and make your products beautiful. Stephen Gould has been in business for about 80 years, serving thousands of customers, and we have served customers as long as 30 plus years, and we have global factories near our customers anywhere in the world. And we take pride in customer satisfaction, on-time delivery, quality levels, and more importantly, we have the factories near our customers anywhere in the world. And our capabilities include any kind of material, any kind of packaging, contract packaging, logistics, and contract assembly to help you scaling up your business or make your products look beautiful. So with that in mind, I'm really appreciated of Stephen Gould for letting me continue my work in the field of quality and advancing it. So the question is, why process thinking? ISO 9001 standard 2000 version have incorporated PDCA-based thinking since 2000. And we have been trying, and I have learned that it has not been easy for many corporations and many organizations to institutionalize process thinking. So ISO standards promote adoption of process approach, and it means systematic definition and management of processes, and of course, using the PDCA cycle. In terms of the PDCA, the way it is defined, the way it is stated in the ISO 9000 standards, clause 3.2, 0.3.2, plan, do, check, act. Plan is established objectives, do is implement what is planned, check is to monitor, and act is to take actions to improve the performance. So this description is very reasonable and very good description. However, many of us are unable to implement it. And in the standard itself, the way standards are organized, they're organized using the PDCA approach. As you can see that planning, supporting operations, performance evaluation, and improvement, and led by the leadership. So, and the Cloud 3.3, in terms of risk-based thinking, has been added in place of preventive action to continue to identify the opportunities for improvement and mitigating risk. So, risk-based thinking has been implicit in preventive action, analysis, and continuous improvement requirements. Risks can also be associated with opportunities, and the risks need to be addressed to mitigate negative effects. So that's the concept of what is expected in ISO 9000 standards right now. Just to clarify some of the terms the way I understand, process thinking, what does it mean? It really means our ability to understand how things work. Risk-based thinking, it means our ability to anticipate problems and mitigate them. And the risk assessment is to identify risks, potential factors, or activities that could adversely affect our business or processes or customer satisfaction. And the risk mitigation, it will include activities to reduce potential occurrence of those problems. So let's look at the process thinking first. So how do we implement process thinking in the ISO 9000 standards? So about 10 years ago, I had a question that why U.S. manufacturing was suffering globally while we were the leaders in 60s and 70s. And what I found that, and my assumption was that if it has been going on for so long, that it must be inculcated in our culture. And if it is our culture, then it must be an old principle that we have been practicing for a long time. So I went back to the beginning of the quality professions, late 19th century, early 20th century, and try to understand what was happening and where we learned the things that are not applicable today. So what I learned that, early stages of quality profession, if you look at it, is conventionally you have a Smith's mentality, the craftsperson's mentality, where there's a process, they build something, they give it to the customer, and if it doesn't work, it comes back to the customer, the craftsperson to repair, rework, and deliver back to the customers. As the products started to become more complex, processes started to become more complex. And as a result, the first process moved away from the customer and the last process remained nearest the customers. So we forgot to connect all the processes to customer requirements. As a result, now we are having problems, defects, and yield reductions. So Walter Shewhart in 1920s, he developed the concept of SPC, statistical process control, and he applied that at the output of the product. So when something was produced, he would apply the statistical rules, target and tolerance, and then whatever is acceptable, that would be shipped within those control limits, and whatever is out of control limits, he would then take actions. And OCAP, he called it out of control action plan. So that was the first generation of process control. It moved from it started at the product level, as we can see that. And later on, this OCAP became the PDCA, and credit goes to Deming, where plan, do, check, act came into existence. And I've been watching, and I have loved PDCA for a long time, and it has been discussed in my books many times. But I was always concerned about the C, because check, as we have learned in the quality profession, is a check, is a like non-value added activity. So how can we have a non-value added activity in our PDCA model? That was my curiosity. And we also learned with experience, as you can see, that the output of the PDCA, we normally have this, now we develop sampling plan. And sampling plan allows to ship acceptable versus reject material. So acceptable is shipped, and reject is withheld and then something else with. So the point is we start shipping acceptable material. So if you look at the distribution of the process output within those specs, you can see it's like a very uniform distribution. And then we do get the customer returns, and many times we are unable to diagnose, unable to analyze why it failed. And if you notice that most of the time, many of the field problems are assigned the defect code of no trouble found or no problem found, MTF or MPF, and then we struggle, what happened? If you notice, if you look at that, in this kind of mindset, in this PDCA approach, there's a lot of it is marginal material. And the marginal material, it can pass, it can fail, depending upon the circumstances, the tester, the operator, the environment, anything can vary, and that can change the decision of between accept and reject. So that's a dilemma with the PDCA and the output that we sense. And I have a lot of experience working with semiconductors and electronic products and other products where NTF was a very common situation. We just couldn't figure out what's happening. So if you look at it, in 1920, when the PDCA was developed, it was developed for product control. And my hypothesis was that we didn't really have a process management model, which we need today. So as acceptable product, but we also learned that if we build to limits, we check for acceptability, we build tolerable product. So acceptable means tolerable product. And the question is then, do we really want tolerable product? Do we want our customers to build tolerable product, to receive tolerable product? So in summary, what it means is that we always expect excellence, but we are willing to deliver acceptable. So there's a gap in our approach, what we want and what we produce. And somehow we have to align it so that we also can produce acceptable product. So as a result, now since we have defects, then we have the new concept that evolved. And first of all, if you notice why we have defect, because eventually our distribution is very wide. And that led to the concept of cost of poor quality, because now we have failures, we have extra inspections, and we have re-inspection, another inspections, and multiple inspections throughout the process flow. So now we have cost of poor quality that ranges from 5 to 20%. I've heard larger numbers, and I've seen larger numbers. So goal is to produce fewer failures and test or verify less. To me, if we are improving the quality, it also means we should be testing less, we should be verifying less. So let's look at it, that how do we address it? So when World War II ended, Denning was sent to Japan to help Japanese industries to recover from the World War and then come back and be competitive. So Taguchi, Dr. Genichi Taguchi, he developed this model called loss function. According to him, anything that is not produced on target, there's a loss. And this is a loss to society, not, it could be either to the customers or to the producer, but there's a loss. So it is a social responsibility for us to aim to be producing at the target. So that's important to know that as a result of what is happening in Japan, with the implementation of PDCA concept, there's a need for producing on target. And Taguchi developed the concept called offline quality, which is quality in design. That means we should be designing to targets, whether it's a product design or the process design. There's another concept was developed in that time frame was by Professor Koru Ishikawa, is root cause analysis, and which we are very familiar with. So in the root cause analysis, he has identified 4 major branches, as you can see, material, method, machine, and the skills. And if you draw the line around this, it probably becomes like a fishbone diagram. This is also called a fishbone diagram. As you can see that, and the problem is the mouth of the fish, where you write down the problem. But this is really a collaborative approach to solving a problem in absence of a lot of data and doing collectively with the expertise in the room. So never to be built the cause and effect diagram alone. And the main significance of the cause and effect diagram is it's a wonderful tool to list all potential causes. So just to summarize, as a PDCA, that PDCA initially, to my knowledge, was developed for product or production control. And if you notice that most of the time when things go wrong in producing acceptable product, we blame operator, that new operator, old operator made a mistake, and we keep training and retraining the operators. Even as an engineering process, we don't get the good data. PDCA data is primarily attribute data, pass or fail. And then PDCA process led to the cost of poor quality. Now we need to address that, and how do we do that? So working with Six Sigma and trying to achieve excellence, we found that our tools are limited. So there are opportunities in the PDCA model where we could do something different to improve. Uh, so here, if you look at C in the PDCA is primarily non-value added. Acceptable performance is equal to C grade performance, where we want to ship A grade performance. And I have learned that in earlier, like in 80s or early 90s, when a lot of companies making electronic product, they would not test the finished product because they have the confidence in their processes and the process capabilities that it would work. And when I was proving the Six Sigma concepts myself at Motorola in 1987, 88, 89 timeframe, and when we improved the process and improved the process capability from 1.1 to 2.2, we could literally reduce inspection by 70%. So where we have one engineer responsible for each one process, now we can have one engineer who could manage three processes. So there's a lot to be gained by aiming at producing excellence. So in 2006, 2007, or 2005 timeframe, I was just trying to find the answer to the question, and I came across, I researched the process, and I found out, as I showed you, and it's published in Quality Progress. So if you are in the ASQ members, you can get the copy from Quality website, ASQ website. So I was very impressed that once it was published in Quality Progress, the first users of the PDCA model was U.S. military, the University of Military Intelligence. And they just used on their own, they used part of it, only the prepared part of it, and they could save more than 2,000 hours of work in 1.2 man years in one process. That was amazing to me. And then I talked to George Stamler, and he said, we think military is very big, they have a lot of money. And he said, any little things we can save for the government, it's really welcome anytime. So we should always look at how can we improve our processes and the tools in the field of quality that would help us improve the quality across. And these days, as we have a lot of conversation going on about collaboration with Russia, I'm very proud that this was the only thing I've done in my career that has been translated in Russian language many years ago. This side note.
Praveen,
So yes.
did you want to do the poll on are you seeing measurable benefits of implementing the
Sure.
process approach?
Sure.
Okay, great. So I'll just launch this real quick, guys. And this is an opportunity for you to tell us if you're seeing measurable benefits of implementing the process approach. So you can select one of either yes, no, or not sure. And leave that up for just a few seconds here. About 50% of you have voted. And I'll go ahead and close this and show everyone the results. So about 71% of you have said yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, I'll hide this and let you continue with your presentation.
So if you look at the process thinking and how the new process model works. So I think many of us have tried to incorporate a PDCA-based process approach, but the question is how we do that. How do we institutionalize? Some of us might have done that. Well, that's understandable, but most of us still struggle in implementing the process approach. I did a survey in a meeting of quality professionals last week, and I asked them how many of them really have been implementing PDCA-based process approach for the ISO 9000 systems. And actually, I was surprised to see, or maybe not so surprised to see, none of them raised a hand. Then I asked them, how did you use PDCA then? Because everyone is very familiar with the PDCA, and most of them use PDCA for more like solving problems. So plan to them more like define, more like Six Sigma, DMAIC approach. So plan means define, do the work, and then verify and take actions. So it's still, there's a little bit lessons to be learned to how to implement PDCA-based process approach. And I feel that the new model that we have developed called 4P model, which implies prepare, perform, perfect, and progress. It helps us implement the PDCA-based approach in ISO 9000 systems and see benefits. Some time ago, I was working with a large company, where the VP of quality said, American culture, shoot and aim. We love to shoot and aim. I mean, basically, that's what the PDCA allowed us to make first and then verify it. versus newer economies where they have the target to compete with, which is American economy, and where they will aim and shoot, and that's how they gain the competitive edge. So 4P model, the prepare, perform, perfect, and progress model is developed based on the work of those 5 quality gurus, Ishikawa, Joanne, Taguchi, Deming, and Schwartz. As you would see that these guys, how they have contributed to the process. So I recognize that these people have been trying to improve the quality process and PDCA process. Even Deming himself developed a new model called PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act. But people chose to use the path of least resistance, which will turn out to be Plan, Do, Check, Act. And in this process, we stuck to the limits, making acceptable and reject product, and we missed the target. In real life, in the business concepts, we all need to produce to the target and ship to the tolerance. Now, instead, we build to the tolerance, build to the limits. And that's where we have issues and where the yields are limited. So in this process, you can see prepare. Prepare consists of what Ishikawa did to identify the root cause of the problem. So one of the challenges we had in our quality field was differentiating between corrective action and preventive action. Yes, some people can have the definition, but really there was a confusion to the point we removed it from the standards. So corrective action really is when you apply the Ishikawa model, fishbone diagram, or the 4M process as a feedback process. When the problem occurs, you correct it, that's a corrective action. The preventive action is when you apply the same model in the design phase before you produce it, that becomes preventive. So that's why it's called feed forward. So if you do feed forward, it's a preventative, feedback, it's a corrective. So now if you notice that we have created the prepare phase, because when we have a process, we don't really plan, we prepare or set up to do well. So this includes material / information, machines / tools, method / approach, mind / skills. What I did, because material, method, machine, and manpower as developed by Ishikawa, that was changed to person power because of the gender equality. And now in this new century of knowledge and information and service, our material has changed to information. So I have added 4 more parallel items. So material / information, machine / tools, could be software tools, hardware tools, method / approach, formal versus informal processes, and because everything cannot be documented, and then mind, intelligence versus skills. Now, as we know, that garbage in, garbage out. So if the inputs are well taken care of it, most likely you will have a good output. And then that's Ishikawa's contribution to make sure that everything going in is right if you apply it in feed forward mode. The perform well, Joanne has always preached to excel in what we do and do well. Some of us are familiar with the slogan, just do it, but we recognize just do it is not just good enough. We need to learn to do well. So in the perform case, we have to do well, and everything we create and set in a process has to be with the mindset of doing it well. And what it does, there's a difference between just doing it, just be jump and doing it, versus do well means it forces to think, what do I need to do well? And that's where the preparation comes in. And the preparation is prerequisite for excellence. And then we have a target, which Taguchi has promoted through the design and with the product design, the process design, in order to achieve perfection. I recognize, and we learned that in 50, the yields were 50%, 60, 60%, 70, about 70%. So it just improved every year. And now people do not expect any failures. So quality is given, and everything else, the price, are the negotiating points. So we have to learn to be at that level where quality is given, and we are producing excellent products. So how do you do that? So we have on target. So we verify the performance against the target, and then accept whatever it is available, whichever is acceptable within the tolerance. But aim always has to be to set on the target. And the progress, Deming has always promoted variability reduction. According to him, variability is evil, and that's what the excessive variability causes the problem. So we always have to work on bringing the process closer to the target by reducing variability. And Schwartz is the founder of this OCAP, Out of Control Action Plan, which is a control loop we have right now, and that defines it. So the 4P process is the transformation of the PDCA into a process management tool. If you start managing a process, you first do the output, that's the easiest to do. Then it moves to the process, which is in process control, and it moves to the inputs, we start managing the process. So the control, the assurance, and the management. It means you have to watch all three of them, inputs, in process, and outputs. If you remove the figures, the process looks like this, very similar to impulsive design because it's a control model, but this is how it works. So so you define the target first, what you want to accomplish. And if you remember that in ISO 9000, we have to establish measures of effectiveness. So perfect establishing a target allows us to establish measures of effectiveness upfront for each process. And that helps us to then prepare what we need to do to excel. And then we can make a list of items that we need, make sure they're good, they're acceptable, working with our suppliers with the proper controls, and then we can improve the process yields in the process. So what happens as the benefits of the 4P model when we apply the 4P model? One is that we can now synchronize the gap, minimize the gap between our customer expectations and our supply chain and in our process capabilities. So if customer expects excellence, we can deliver excellence. And excellence is not delivered, is not produced with extra or excessive inspection and tests. I have seen that where many companies implement more inspection, more tests, more verification to produce good parts. That is not the quality product. Quality product is that requires less inspection, less verification, less testing. Implementation of process thinking for minimizing cost of poor quality, which consists of appraisal and failure costs. As you would notice that most of the failures we see in the field are due to the inputs, the incoming materials to the process. And most of the testing and the verification and the inspection is done because of building to the limits, not building to the targets. Easy implementation, easy analysis because of the data, and more preventive actions using measures of effectiveness. If you look at the distribution, this is what acceptable product looks like. We build the limits, we build tolerable products, and we check for acceptability through inspection within the limits. And we have marginal output that gives us headaches and create the cost of the warranties and the field service, all of the cost of poor quality items. And then if you build to the target, the output looks like this. So how would you compare these two? And you can see that the excellence should cost less than acceptable product. It sounds counterintuitive that we just jump and start building it. As somebody has said, a good capacity is not about building more units. Good capacity is building more good units. So our goal should be not to produce as many as possible, but as many possible good units. So if you look at the process, the excellence process, the 4P model and the center process, you can see there's not many products or items close to the specification. As CP and CPK reach close to 2, we can start reducing inspection and testing and verification. So you have to experience that if you implement the process, you will have fewer defects, fewer things to worry about it, less testing. So acceptable products now put the pressure on testing and calibration and instrument capabilities. And in the process with the excellent capabilities and excellent products, calibration becomes less significant. The testing becomes less significant. So there's a lot of benefits in doing that. In my opinion, in my experience, product built with the 4P mindset, the target-driven manufacturing can cost you as much as 30% less than the acceptable product. And go try it. So I want to look at the cost of failures. If you look at the cost of failures, cost of appraisal is happening because of people are not paying attention or not meeting the target. So the not defining the target leads to excessive testing because we don't have the confidence in the process as we are building to the limits. And then not doing enough preparation leads to the cost of failures, and that can be expensive, the field failures, where if you catch them early, it could cost you $1, for example. If you catch them in the field, it could be $1,000, a lot more than $1,000. So PDCA allows us to systematically reduce the cost of poor quality. And I have experienced that in early assignments where We have reduced cost of poor quality by 60-70% and without much effort. In terms of applying this PDCA, the 4P model to precision parts in medical device industry, where we were able to reduce the PPMs, so the defect rates, almost 80-90%. But I would say in general, if we implement the 4P model, the target-driven manufacturing, and with proper preparation, we can reduce the defect rate by about 70% on the average. So if you look at the benefits of PDCA versus the 4P model, or the comparative analysis of the PDCA versus the 4P model, the PDCA was designed primarily for the product management, product control, and the 4P model is designed for the process management. Now, if you apply the PDCA model to the process management as specified in ISO 9000 standards, it's a conceptual model, and most of us are unable to deploy it at the process level. And versus 4P now, it is deployable, very specific, very prescriptive, and easily adaptable to the process. In the PDCA, we are unable to implement the process management, easy to understand and implement in case of 4P model. In the PDCA, we are building on acceptable product within the limits, versus in 4P model, we are aiming for excellence by defining the target. The likely source of the operator of the problem in the PDCA is operator with the attribute data, and in the case of 4P model, the likely source of the problem lies in the process inputs and probably engineering. It goes back to engineering. The problems remedied through the more inspection, and more inspection. I remember when our defects numbers look high in the management report, management review, then we would just put one more inspection called pre-inspection. And the pre-inspection, sort them out again before they're found, and just don't count them. So we improve the number of defects by not counting them and by adding more inspection, and that's not improvement process. Versus problems remedied through adjustments in the inputs and activities, and that's more preventive in the process. In process controls, to manage output product, input management to ensure virtual perfection of the output. Very, very significant. And the marginal performance defects are in percentages. With the 4P model, you have the defects in PPMs. And in case of PDCA, high cost of poor quality, and you're bound to have a lower cost of poor quality using the 4P mindset. So again, the difference I'm going to show you that there is a very valid and proven difference between the performance managed to the target and the proper preparation. Now, the question is, how do we implement the process approach in our ISO 9000 compliant quality management system? So one way I have done it many times, that one is integrate in documentation template. So what we do, we want to implement these 4Ps in the documentation template, and then ensure the target and the preparation or the setup are clearly spelled out, because these are the two places where most of the errors occur and the cost of poor quality is affected adversely. And in preparation, it sounds complex, but I have made it very easy for you by just making a list. So you identify these 8 categories: material, information, machine, tools, method, approach, skills, and people, and then just write down what's needed in terms of material, in terms of information. That allows you to put your arms around the scope of your project upfront. This also helps you doing your FMEA, the PFMEA, the DFMEA, whatever analysis, corrective action, preventive action. So this is the most important aspect of process management, that's preparation, just knowing what goes in. Even as an engineering mind, to establish the causative model and understanding how everything works, we must know what goes into the process of the product to make sure that it works and it comes together the way it is expected to be. So I just made one example for the webinar. Suppose if I'm doing a webinar, what would I need? It's a preparation. It's a very quickly put together a list of things. So that's how easy it is. It should take no more than 10 minutes if you are the process guy, but it should be done, because that helps you it helps you from preventing any input that could be critical to the process. And if you notice, it also helps you aligns with the SIPOC process, where you look at the inputs and the suppliers and the process and the outputs and the customers. So this is a wonderful way of identifying all the inputs for everything we do in the process management, process control, and the product control. And then I take those 4 Ps and incorporate into my process template, the documentation templates. As you can see, most of us already have these purpose, scope, responsibility, reference document. But in the procedures, I have 4 different blocks in the process of prepare, perform, perfect, and progress. And they can be transformed into applicable terms to the process, But the mindset remains, what is the preparation step? How do we prepare the process? How do we perform? How do we do that? And without this, we have done a wonderful job earlier in case of perform and in case of checking, but we could do better in terms of perfect and the preparation. So it really helps us in establishing measures of effectiveness, which ISO 9000, 2000, and onwards have been asking for ensuring the effectiveness of the quality system for a business and establishing the right KPIs. But we had the difficulty, but by having each process, each function, then we can decide which ones are the important at the business level. So you can see how we are really, so the point is here, how do we incorporate our process mindset, our process model in the procedures so that we can institutionalize throughout. So if anyone developing a procedure, they will use this template, they will answer these questions, and they will have those items addressed. So that's about process thinking, that how do we implement process thinking? Rachel, there's a poll.
Yes, I was just going to ask you if you wanted me to share that. So our last poll for today is launching right now. So go ahead and answer the question if you're online here. So based on this presentation, would you say you have implemented risk assessment and mitigation effectively? And about 30% of you have voted. I'll just leave it up for just a few more minutes. Sorry, not minutes, seconds. And all right, so I'm going to close this out and share it with all of you. And just so everyone knows, I will be sharing this presentation recording as well as the PowerPoint presentation with you by tomorrow morning. GoToWebinar will automatically send out the recording, but the PowerPoint slides will be sent out separately. So hopefully you can share this with your team as well.
Okay, thanks, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at the risk-based thinking. So what we have done, the risk is the potential for things going wrong or could go wrong. And preventative actions have been delegated to identifying and mitigating potential risks. That's preventive. So the question is, how do we identify risk? How do we make it a process? And we quality guys, we process guys, we want the tools which we all can implement versus leading to some various definitions of risk. Because the risk can be in financial world, risk is everywhere, and there are a lot of risk analysis models are out there. But in terms of quality and the process, I want to simplify it so that we all can use simple tools to assess risks and take mitigating actions. And if you notice that ISO 9000 says the risks must be addressed. They are not very specific, not prescriptive, because it's the first time we are incorporating in the standards. So there's a leeway, but we would like to get the most value out of it. And there's a lot of value in a risk-based thinking and taking action. For example, if we have a project that has been experiencing some customer issues, so it's a good idea to do the risk analysis and not only address what customer is experiencing, but even looking further and see what else could go wrong so that customer doesn't experience again. So again, same way to start with the process-based thinking. So the risk-based thinking is more effective using the process-based thinking. So the way to identify risks is list all the input categories and items, what you need in a process, because they are the most opportunities where things could go wrong. And then what could go wrong, you write down the mode, and then you define the actions. What would you do to reduce the risk? That's very simple, right, in the process. Then, but the risk can be at the business level, at the product level, and the process level. So how do we address that? So the business level, as you also remember that ISO 9000 has a business context. So you have the business context through stakeholders analysis, and also look at the risk and opportunities at the business level. So we use a tool called SWOT analysis as a business tool, which is not very complicated. And I think all of us, some of us might have heard about this, used it, but it's not difficult to learn. So it has the 4 quadrants: strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And it's not a rocket science, so we can just make this 4 quadrants and start writing in the team environment with the leadership in the room. This also allows us to engage the corporate leadership to be part of the conversation. Where strengths, I think every business has some strengths. Every business has some weaknesses. Jot them down, whatever they are. And the opportunities could be new markets, could be new customers, could be new areas, new technologies. You can identify those. And the threats could be the competition, could be the poor performance, poor quality, and not meeting customer requirements, not being in touch with the customers. As you can see, a lot of businesses these days, specifically in the retail industries, are losing their market share. They're closing stores because of the competition from online marketing on the businesses and not being able to address customer needs with the changing demographics. Then once you have identified the risks, so then you can list those risks to the organization. Then you assess them in terms of impact. How much is the impact? What is the severity? What is the frequency of occurrence? And establish the RPN. It's slightly different here. I don't include the detection at the business level. I just want to look at the impact, severity, and frequency. But you can change it, as many of us are familiar with the FMEA model. So we can use the 4P model to identify the risk, use FMEA to assess the impact of the risk, and then determine the mitigation action. And so, for example, here you identify the risk from the SWOT analysis, assess the impact on a simple scale of 1 3 9, as you learned from the QFD method, quality function deployment method, and then prioritize them, and then identify what actions to be taken to mitigate those risks. And then develop a plan where we give the responsibilities to specific owner, estimate data completion, and maintain the status of the process. So, and then you take actions. So as you can see that identifying the risks, you want to know what is included in the process, in the business, in the product level, and then take the action. So at the business level, we identify the risks through SWOT analysis, prioritize them, and then take action. Now, in terms of project level, which we did recently on a project, where we use, again, the preparation step in the terminology, and then any additional things come to mind. So it is not limited to just all those the 8 items on the preparation, but you can add other items. Being in the logistics and the packaging industry, you can see those are the issues we had. And we look at the project aspects, potential for anticipated risks, and actions to reduce the risk. That was wonderful analysis. Customers loved it, and they told us that's what they want us to do proactively. And then as a project risk assessment, it should be the process risk assessment, where you take those 8 items and assess the potential or anticipated risks and actions to reduce risks. So as you can see, project and the process, it should be process. Risk assessment are very similar approaches and identifying the risk at the process level. So we are not limited to identifying risk in the generic terms at the business level. We can evaluate at the process level, we can evaluate at the project level, and we can evaluate the risk at the business level. So that sort of summarizes, concludes the implementation of process thinking and the risk assessment. So to summarize, the 4P model of process management can help an organization to implement the PDCA-based process approach effectively. Process thinking can be integrated and standardized in the documentation template. It helps institutionalize the process thinking company-wide. And the 4P model also supports implementation of risk-based thinking.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Praveen. I appreciate that. Great information. If you guys want to read any of the books that Praveen has written, you can do what I did, which is simply go to Amazon and type in his name, and all his books as well as his author page shows up there. So just so you know, all 15 books plus are on Amazon. So we're going to open it up for questions now. Like I said before, you can always type in your questions into the GoToWebinar console under the questions module there. We do have a couple of questions already. First one is, does the 4P model improve QMS value to corporate profitability?
Answer is yes, because you are ensuring that each process is performing its best. So if you look at the corporate profitability, it is adversely affected by the cost of poor quality. So if you are already aware of the reducing the cost of poor quality at the process level, the project level, you're bound to see impact on the profitability. I remember one of the customers told me many years ago that he saw the improvement in profitability by about 2% by implementing effective QMS. So that's what I would think it would affect the profitability. And even in my current position, we believe that better quality affects our overall performance.
Good, okay. Generally speaking, which approach produces fewer rejects, would you say? That's another question we have here.
I think as you saw the chart, the acceptable acceptable output versus excellent output. There's a more marginal products in the acceptable model. So I would say that with the PDCA, what I've learned, yields are roughly around 70%. So if you look at acceptable, when you go to school, when you deliver your homework and done minimally, which is acceptable to pass the course, you get C grade. And because you haven't done your best, you have not given your most. While producing an excellent product, you do your best, do your most, and your number of defects go down, and very few items are very close to the specs. The probability of having items close to specs is very small, so the number of defects will be much smaller using the 4P model.
Okay, great. Another question we have here is, what is the registrar's perspective of risk assessment?
I can share with our registrar's feedback. I think they loved it. Seeing the SWOT analysis to assess the business risks. I think that was a wonderful tool, and it helps us, and certainly helps us passing our registration audit. So I think that they have a positive response to seeing the business analysis, the risk analysis of what we have done here.
Good. Great. So another question we got here is it necessary to follow the 4P model for the ISO 9001-2015 QMS?
It is not really necessary. So ISO 9000 standards promote, the word they use, promotes the PDCA-based process approach. But what I found that it is difficult to implement PDCA-based process approach unless we do something like 4P model. So where you can, and you want to see positive impact of the process-based approach. Otherwise, what do you do with this? So I believe that 4P model would help implement PDCA-based process approach, and people will see tremendous benefits in the company in terms of number of defects, in terms of customer satisfaction, in terms of the impact on profitability.
Good. While we're waiting for some more questions to come in, oh, looks like we got a couple more. But before I get to them, I'm just going to share with everyone an offer that we have for Beacon Quality. So Praveen here has been talking about process thinking, and most of you know about layer process audits, especially if you're in the automotive industry where it is required for tier 1 suppliers. And Beacon Quality is basically taking those layer process audits and other high frequency audits like 5S and health and safety, and making it automated and making it mobile through our product Beacon Quality. And we always offer a 4-week free trial. But for today, we are offering a free iPad if you go through with the trial. You just have to sign up by August 10th. The iPad is compatible with our iOS app, but Beacon Quality is compatible with basically any web-enabled system. And what's included in that free trial is like I said, a 4-week guided pilot. So a lot of software systems just have you go onto their website and download their software or just sign up for a free trial and start using it. However, we want to help you through that process. So not only do you get full access to the system, but you have weekly one-on-one training sessions with our success team to help get you up and running within just a few hours of that first session. And the next 3 sessions are basically just coaching you through the processes, any kind of issues you might be having, how to improve your questions for layer process audits and other audits you might have, how to make sure that automated schedule is running correctly. So you can use that bit.ly link that you see on your screen there, which is bit.ly/iPad for quality. Make sure to use the capital P and capital Q. bit.ly is kind of finicky about that. I will also be sending this link out to all of you at the end of our webinar. And just sign up by August 10th and follow through with the free guided pilot or trial, and we'll send you the iPad. So some other questions that have come up here, Praveen, is for 4P model, how is it linked with Deming's award?
Well, I think 4P model is not linked with Deming's awards at all. I have not linked to the Deming awards criteria. So I think people have known PDCA, in my opinion, but I would assume and I would think that PDCA has been a known so-called process management model. But if you look into detail carefully, it was designed to control the product, to manage the product. It wasn't designed because at the time, processes were not very popular. It was more about the product because processes were not complex, products were not complex. So most of it was done for the product control. So I would think that any Deming Awards or Malcolm Baldrige Awards, I think they would all recommend and they will all promote process-based thinking. But the challenge we had and I had was I did not know what to use to implement process thinking because there's none, and I couldn't find any tool. So I ended up researching and developing the tool to address my question about how to implement process thinking. So to answer the question, I would not know how would it be related to because I didn't link to the Deming's Award, but I'm sure it is inclusive in the Deming's Awards criteria.
Good. Another question we have here is suppliers typically manufacture to the limits. Do you have a recommendation on how to transition or convince them to build to target without increasing costs?
Yes. So first of all, there's a misunderstanding that to produce better product, it would cost more. So what I used to do when I was implementing and experimenting with the precision company, that quality as a professional, the 2 ways you can do that: by demanding, or by influencing, by selling to show the benefits of whatever you do. So in my case, when I was experimenting with this, so I first found a collaborator, a process owner in the company to work with me to develop a success story. And in return, I told him I will reduce his inspection, cost of inspection and testing. And even before we begin, I recognized that whatever inspection testing they were doing, they were not using any of the data. It was just being wasted. I said, well, whether you do or you don't do it, it doesn't matter. So why even do all of it? So I right away help them reduce inspection. It's a little risk you take, but you are aware of it. And then get them to collaborate with the time they save with you to implement the target-driven manufacturing. In other words, you work with them, revise the process, help them define the targets, start setting up the process on the targets, and then they start seeing the benefits. They would love it. I had one person in a union shop. He was very strong and very stringent about what should be done. And when he was done, I think he was partner to improving the process by more than 90%, the reduction in the defects.
Wow.
So you are bound to see the improvement and they would buy into it. So I don't think you have to justify it, but you just have to take a little risk in finding a partner to work with you.
Finding the advocate to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So, and one more question here. How does 4P model help in the R&D of the organization?
Yes, it's very important. Actually, if you notice today, studies have found that the design actually affects 70% of the cost factors of a product.
Wow.
This has been done in the research. Design affects 70% of the cost. What it implies that most of the problems we see they all relate back to somewhere in design. And so if we implement the process thinking and the 4P model, we have better data about the process capability. And that we can communicate to our designers proactively so that they can set more realistic tolerances or specs for the design rather than plus minus 10% pick up from the air. So I think by applying the 4P model, we get the better data, we get a better knowledge of the process, which helps us achieve better results to design for manufacturability mindset. One thing we need to do, we need to ask our designers to focus on specifying the targets. Just remember, the designing to specs designing to tolerances or the limits is an approximate design. Designing to target is a precision design. So they have to become more accurate in the designing process. And just imagine if everything in the product, every characteristics in the product is right on the target theoretically, the product would be on target and nothing close to specs. You don't need the specs. So I think many times designers focus on tightening the specs just tightening the specs. So tightening the specs does not make it a better design. Better design would be if we design to target and that meets customers' expectations. So I think in terms of affecting R&D, I would say more as a D, not in the R, that requiring designers to specify the targets, which could then translate into process targets. That's hard to do, but needs to be done.
Yes, yes. Well, I want to thank you so much, Praveen, for being with us here today. I think it's been very beneficial to our listeners and attendees here, as well as ones to come, as we will be putting this online for others to view as well later. So thank you so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your summer.
Thank you all and have a wonderful day. And good luck with applying the 4P model. Thank you.
Thank you.